My mother-in-law pressed the envelope into my hands before the priest even finished speaking. "Sign these," she whispered. Her voice was flat, cold, like she was reading a grocery list. It's what Daniel would have wanted. My fingers trembled. I hadn't even processed it yet. That my husband was gone. That I was standing in a room that smelled like lilies and grief, and I would never, ever hear his voice again. I looked at her. I was waiting for comfort, waiting for her to pull me close, the way a mother should. Instead, she looked at me like I was a stranger who had wandered in off the street. I opened the envelope slowly, and my stomach dropped. Legal documents, property transfers, asset relinquishments. They weren't mourning their son. They were erasing his wife. And I realized, standing right there, right beside his coffin, that I was completely alone. And that was the moment my life was destroyed. My name is Emily Carter. If my story touches you, please like and comment. 3 days later, I came home to find my key didn't work. I stood at the door confused. I tried again. Nothing. I knocked. His mother opened the door, just enough to block the entrance, just enough to make sure I couldn't step inside. "You're not welcome here anymore." I laughed at first. I actually laughed. I thought it was grief talking. I thought maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe she just needed time. Then she held out my suitcase. They had already packed my things. Every item I owned, folded neatly, like they couldn't wait to make me disappear. Behind her, I saw Daniel's dog, Max. He was staring at me from across the room. His tail wasn't wagging, he just looked, and then he whimpered. She closed the door before I could say goodbye to him. I stood on that front step for a long time, suitcase at my feet, not knowing where to go. That was the night I slept in my car. And I realized something, right there in the dark, with the windows fogging up around me. They weren't grieving. They were replacing me. The next morning I stopped at a gas station to get coffee. I slid my debit card. Declined. I tried again. Declined. I reached for my credit card. Declined. My hands started shaking. I drove straight to the bank. The teller looked at her screen, and she looked at me. And then she looked back at her screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The joint accounts were emptied, and then frozen, and then transferred." I sat down in the chair beside her desk because my legs stopped working. His parents had legal authority. It had been set up years ago. Some paperwork Daniel had signed when he was sick, and I had never thought to question it. I had $312 left to my name. $312 only. They hadn't just kicked me out of the house. They had made sure I couldn't survive. They had made sure that when I fell, I would fall hard, and they did it quietly, cleanly. Like they had been planning it for a long time. I tried calling people, friends, Daniel's cousins, anyone who might pick up. Most of them didn't answer. Then Daniel's cousin Aaron finally picked up the phone. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said slowly, "Emily, she told everyone that you abandoned him before he died. She said you weren't even there." I couldn't breathe. I sat in my car in a parking lot with the phone pressed against my ear, and I could not breathe. I was there. I held his hand every single day. I slept in that hospital chair for weeks. I was there when he took his last breath. And she had told people I wasn't. They weren't just removing me physically. They were rewriting the whole story. They were turning me into the villain so that nobody would question what they were doing. So that if I spoke up, nobody would believe me. They weren't just taking the house and the money, they were taking my name. I went back one more time. I just wanted Max. That was all. I just wanted the dog. His father answered the door this time. He was calm, almost pleasant, in the way people are pleasant when they've already won. "He's happier here," he said. Behind him I could hear Max barking. Not a happy bark, a desperate one. The kind of bark that means, "Please don't leave me. Please, I said. He was Daniel's dog. He knows me. He needs me. His father just looked at me for a moment. And then he closed the door. No argument. No anger. He just closed it the way you close a door on someone who doesn't matter. I stood there on that porch listening to Max bark on the other side, and something clicked in my mind. A thought so clear it felt like ice. They weren't hurting. They weren't broken by grief. They were winning, and they wanted me to know it. My car ran out of gas on a Tuesday. I pushed it to the side of the road, and then I just sat on the curb. My phone was at 4%. I sat there and watched it die, and when the screen went black, I couldn't move. I just sat on the concrete and stared at nothing. No husband, no home, no family, no money, no phone, no future. I had been a person with a life, a real life, with someone I loved and a dog and a home we built together. And in the space of 4 days, all of it was gone. They had erased me, and the terrifying part was that I almost believed I deserved it. I sat there for a long time, and then something changed. It wasn't a big thing. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It was quiet. Something inside me stopped breaking and started hardening. I sold my wedding ring. I sat in the parking lot of a pawn shop for 40 minutes before I could make myself go inside. That ring had been on my finger for 6 years. Daniel had saved for 8 months to buy it. It wasn't expensive, but it was ours. Handing it over broke something in me that the funeral hadn't. The funeral had been grief. This was survival. The man behind the counter gave me enough for a bus ticket and a little extra to eat for a few days. I walked out of that shop with the ring gone from my finger, and I felt the absence of it like a missing limb. I went to the bus station. I bought a ticket to the farthest city I could afford. I did not tell anyone, not Aaron, not anyone. If they wanted me erased, then fine. I would disappear completely. I would become someone they couldn't find, someone they couldn't reach, someone who didn't need them, or anyone like them, ever again. The first job that would hire me was a receptionist position at a small shipping company on the east side of the city where I didn't know a single person. Minimum wage, $8.50 an hour. I rented the smallest apartment I had ever seen in my life, a studio. No furniture except a mattress I bought secondhand. No one there knew my name before. No one knew what had happened to me. No one asked. And at first that silence felt like loneliness, but slowly it began to feel like something else. It began to feel like freedom. For the first time in years, I existed outside of their version of me, outside of Daniel's wife, outside of the woman they decided wasn't real family. I was just Emily. And Emily showed up to work on time. Emily answered every call with a smile in her voice. Emily learned every system, every process, every name, and slowly, very slowly, I began to rebuild. Months passed, then a year. I got promoted to office manager. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with actual furniture. A couch, a small dining table, a plant by the window that I remembered to water. I started smiling again, not the kind of smile you put on for other people, the real kind, the kind that comes from somewhere inside when you realize you're actually okay. They had taken my husband's savings. They had taken the house. They had taken Max. They had taken my name in that city. But they couldn't take me, the real me. The part that gets up and keeps going when every single reason to keep going has been stripped away. I used to think that was weakness, that I would fall apart without things to hold on to. But it turns out, when you have nothing left, you find out what you're actually made of. And I was made of something they hadn't counted on. They just didn't know it yet. It was a Wednesday night in October, 13 months after I had left. I was exhausted. I had worked a double shift and my feet ached, and I just wanted to get home. I stopped at the gas station 2 blocks from my apartment to grab a bottle of water. The cashier was a young woman with bright eyes and a name tag that said Patrice. She smiled at me over the counter. "Feeling lucky tonight?" she said, nodding toward the lottery display behind her. I almost said no. I had my water. I had my keys in my hand. I was ready to go home. But something made me pause. Some small, quiet thing. "Sure," I said. "Why not?" I bought 1 ticket, stuffed it in my jacket pocket, walked home, made dinner, went to bed, and forgot about it completely. A week later, my coworker Donna came running across the office like the building was on fire. "Emily," she was waving something in the air. "Emily, where is your ticket, the one from last Wednesday? Where is it? Go get it right now." I laughed. I thought she was joking. I dug through my jacket pocket, found the crumpled paper, and held it out to her. She grabbed her phone, pulled up the lottery numbers, and started reading them out loud, one by one. I checked each one, and then I checked them again. I then sat down on the floor, right there in the middle of the office, because my legs stopped working for the second time in my life. Every number matched. Every single one. Donna was screaming. Other people were running over. Someone was calling someone. And I sat on that floor, and I pressed the ticket against my chest. I thought, I am not just lucky. I am free. The lottery office confirmed it. $100 million. The woman across the desk smiled and slid a paper towards me, and I stared at the number written on it, and I could not make it feel real. My mind kept going back to the night I slept in my car, with a single suitcase and a wedding ring that I sold 3 days later. To the bank teller's face when she told me the accounts were empty. To Max barking behind that closed door. To the bus station. To the pawn shop. To the mattress on the floor of a studio apartment in a city where nobody knew my name. I had been at the very bottom, the absolute bottom. And now I was sitting across from a woman who was asking me how I wanted to receive $100 million. I thought of what they had decided I was. Weak, temporary, replaceable. And I thought, you threw away someone who was going to become completely unstoppable. My face appeared on the news. Every channel, everywhere. The local stations, the national ones. Online, my name, my photo. The story of the woman who won $100 million. They interviewed me briefly outside the lottery office. I kept it simple. I said I was grateful. I said I planned to build a good life. I did not mention them. But I didn't have to, because somewhere in the city I had left behind, they were watching the same screens as everyone else. They were sitting in the house that used to be mine. The house they had changed the locks on, watching my face on the television. And I want you to picture that moment. I want you to really picture it. The moment they recognized me, the moment they looked at each other and understood exactly what they had done. What they had thrown away. Who they had thrown away. I did not watch the news that night. I opened a bottle of wine, sat by my window, and smiled at the city lights. 3 days after the broadcast, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. I pressed the phone to my ear. There was a pause, and then I heard her voice. Soft, almost fragile, like she was calling from somewhere very far away. Emily, sweetheart. Sweetheart. I had not heard that word from her, not once in the last 3 years of my marriage. Not when Daniel was sick, not at the hospital. Not at the funeral. Definitely not when she handed me my suitcase on the front step of my own home. But now that my face was on every television in the country, now that there were 9 zeros attached to my name, now she wanted to call me sweetheart. I held the phone. I listened to the silence on her end, waiting for me to respond. And then, quietly, without a single word, I hung up. The voicemail started that same evening. His father. his sister, Naomi, even his aunt, who I had met exactly twice. They were crying, all of them, apologizing, saying that grief had made them act in ways they weren't proud of, that they hadn't been thinking clearly, that they missed me, that they were so sorry. I listened to every single one, and then I set my phone down and I thought about what grief actually does to a person, because I know grief. I lived inside it. Grief makes you cry at 3 a.m. over a coffee mug that still has his fingerprints on it. Grief makes you forget to eat. Grief makes you numb. But grief does not log into bank accounts and transfer the funds. Grief does not pack someone's suitcase. Grief does not look a widow in the eye and say you're not welcome here anymore. Those things are not grief. Those things are choices. And they had made theirs. Very deliberately and very clearly, they showed up at my apartment, all 3 of them. His mother, his father, and Naomi, standing in my hallway with flowers, big, bright, expensive flowers. His mother was smiling, that soft smile she used to give me when she wanted something from me, back when I first married Daniel, and I was still trying so hard to make her love me. She opened her arms, she actually moved toward me like she was going to hug me. I stepped back, 1 step, quiet, clear. She stopped, and for just a moment, she looked confused, like she genuinely couldn't understand why I wouldn't fall into her arms, like consequences were a concept that had never occurred to her. Like all of it, the locked door, the empty accounts, the closed door on Max, the lies she told, had just dissolved, because she showed up with flowers. I looked at the 3 of them, standing in my hallway, and I said, calmly, "Come in." Not because I forgave them, because I wanted them to see exactly who I had become. His mother sat on my couch, and she looked around the apartment, and she said, "We were just trying to protect Daniel's legacy." Protect. I let that word sit in the room for a moment. I looked at her. She was nodding a little, like she believed it, like that sentence made sense to her. They protected Daniel's legacy by locking out the woman he married, by erasing the accounts she'd contributed to, by telling everyone she had abandoned him, by keeping his dog. That was their definition of protection. And the thing I understood, sitting in that chair across from them, was that they hadn't changed. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were sorry for who I had become. They were sorry that the person they had tried to erase had not stayed erased. They had expected me to disappear, to sink, to become someone too small and too broken to ever show up in their lives again. And instead I was sitting here, in this apartment, with $100 million, watching them explain themselves. His father cleared his throat. He's a man who doesn't show much, he never has. Quiet, careful, always in control. But that afternoon he said something I had not expected. He said, "We thought you would fall apart." He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at his hands. "We thought without Daniel you'd have nowhere to go. No one to help you. We thought you were dependent on him, on us, on everything we had." He paused. "We thought you'd disappear." There it was. That was the truth they had been carrying under all the flowers and the voicemails and the soft voices. They had not acted out of grief. They had acted out of calculation. They had looked at me and decided I was replaceable, weak, a temporary thing in their son's life that they could simply remove. And they had been so certain, so completely certain, that I would never rise. After his father finished speaking, the room went quiet. And then his mother shifted in her seat. She started talking about the house, maintenance costs, property taxes, how things had gotten difficult. Then Naomi mentioned medical bills, their father's back, some procedure that insurance hadn't fully covered. And then, very gently, very carefully, his mother said, "We were hoping as family we could come to some kind of arrangement." There it was, They weren't there because they were sorry. They weren't there because they missed me, or because they finally understood what they had done. They were there because they needed money. They had run the numbers. They had looked at their situation, and then they had looked at mine, and they had come to collect. They had thrown me out with $312 to my name, and now they were sitting in my living room, asking me to save them. I kept my face very still. I just listened, and I let them talk. His mother started crying, not the quiet kind of crying, the big kind, the loud kind, the kind that fills a room and demands that everyone in it respond. She pressed a tissue to her face, and between the sobs she said, "You're still our daughter. You will always be our daughter. We are still family." I looked at her. I thought about the night she handed me my suitcase. I thought about the door closing in my face. I thought about what she had told people, the lie she had spread about me through every person who had ever cared about Daniel. I thought about Max, and I thought about the very specific way she had looked at me at the funeral when she pressed those papers into my hands, like I was an obstacle, not a person, not her son's wife, not someone in pain, an obstacle to be moved. She was still crying, and I waited. I let her cry. And when she finally looked up at me, waiting for me to say something, I said very quietly, "No, I never was." The room went still. All three of them looked at me. His mother had stopped crying. His father had stopped looking at his hands. Even Naomi had gone quiet. I leaned forward slightly, and I asked one question. "Why didn't you stop?" Silence. I kept going. "At what point did one of you look at what you were doing and think, this is wrong? When you were signing the bank paperwork? When you were packing my suitcase? When you were telling people I abandoned him? When you watched me drive away with one bag and nowhere to go? At what point did any of you think, this is a person? This is someone who is hurting? This is someone who just lost her husband?" No one answered, because there was no answer. There had never been a point like that, because they had never, not once, seen me as fully human. They had seen me as temporary, and temporary things don't require explanation when you remove them. I didn't raise my voice. Neither did I insult them. I didn't list every wrong thing they had done, every moment of cruelty, every door they had closed. I looked at the three of them and I said, "Thank you." His mother blinked. His father looked up. Naomi frowned. "Thank you," I said again. "I mean it. Because if you hadn't done what you did, I would have stayed. I would have stayed in that city, in that grief, in that version of myself that kept trying to earn your approval. I would have been so busy trying to be enough for you that I never would have found out what I was capable of on my own. You threw me out, and I built something better than anything we ever had together. So, thank you for showing me who you were early enough that I could still walk away." I watched their faces change, the confusion, then the understanding. Something that looked like shame, but came too late to mean anything. They had not broken me, but they had built me, and now they were sitting across from what they had created. Then his mother asked, quietly and carefully, "Just a little help, just enough to cover the medical bills, just until things settled. Just because family should take care of each other." I listened to all of it, and then I said no. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, not with any of the triumph I had imagined back when I used to lie awake in that tiny studio apartment wondering if they ever thought about what they had done. Just no. Simple. Clean. "I wish you well," I said. "I genuinely do, but I am not going to help you." His mother started to say something. I held up one hand. "We're done," I said. Not with hate, just done. And I stood up. I walked to the door. I opened it, and I waited. Because here's what I had learned in the 2 years since they put me on the street. Revenge is not destruction. Revenge is not anger. Revenge is not making them hurt the way they made you hurt. Real revenge is indifference. 6 weeks later, I went back, not to see them, or for any conversation, not even to make a point, or prove something, or close a chapter. I went back because there was a house listed for sale right next door to theirs. And I bought it. Cash. The realtor didn't even blink. I flew in on a Thursday, signed the papers on Friday, flew back out that evening. But while I was there, while the realtor was walking me through the empty rooms, I stepped out into the backyard, and the fence between the properties was low, and Max was in their yard. He saw me before any of them did. He stopped, his ears went up, and then he ran. He ran straight to the fence. He was barking and spinning, pawing at the wood between us. I crouched down and reached over and let him lick my hand. I looked up. They were standing at their window, all three of them, watching, silent, powerless, and Max's tail was wagging so hard his whole body was shaking. They lost their son. That part, that was real. That was grief that no one can take away, no matter what else they did. They lost their son, and then because of the choices they made in that grief, they lost everything else too. They lost their control. They lost their second chance. They lost the version of the future where I might have eventually forgiven them and we might have found some quiet peace together. But I lost something too. I want to be honest about that. I lost the woman who used to knock on that door, hoping they would let her in. The woman who used to make herself smaller to fit into the space they allowed her. The woman who kept trying, even when it was clear she was fighting alone. She's gone. And I don't grieve her, because in her place is someone who knows her own worth without needing anyone to confirm it. They didn't just throw me out of their house. They threw away the only person who ever truly would have forgiven them. And there is no account, no matter how large, no sum of money in this world that can ever buy that back. Thank you for watching, and remember to click the subscribe button for more.